The base rules of D&D have their fair share of flaws, and I have a bunch of home rules that try and address them. Specifically, I'm going to talk about combat in this segment, but I may very well do more in the future if people want to see them. Now, if you've DM'd or played in a game for any length of time, it's quite possible you've experienced combats that evolve pretty quickly into boring hack and slash encounters that really lack the exhilarating feeling that fighting for your life should evoke. Often it becomes an exceedingly simple numbers game of who can do more flat damage to each other over the course of way too many rounds. Now, there's no need to strategize movement, not much in the order of attacks, and nothing in the rules that incentivizes players to do anything other than say, I walk up and make an attack with my longsword, or I cast Eldritch Blast. And that problem is especially exacerbated for low-level plays, such as 1 to 4, or a high-level play like anything above 14. God forbid you play a fighter whose only options are to hit something over and over and over again, or use your one-use ability to do that again. Unfortunately, that lacks flavor, and that's a big problem. The way that I have always engaged my players in combat is through descriptions of their crazy maneuvers and gruesome murderings of whomever is stupid enough to get in the way of their swords. But, and anyone who's DM'd before knows exactly what I'm talking about, there's always those moments when the players set up this cool series of attacks that would cut their enemy's heels, disarm them, and poke out one of his eyes, and they hit, they don't do enough damage to kill him, and I'm forced to say, yeah, all those hits land, blood is spraying everywhere, but he's still standing up, holding his weapon, and glaring at you with both eyes and 3 hit points. Frankly, that's unfulfilling. It pulls people out of the cinematic narrative and forces them back into the mindset of simple, boring, abstract damage numbers. And it makes sense that that would make the game feel slow and boring because we're motivated by agency. When that's boiled down to the optimal sword stab every turn, our brains turn off and we stop having fun. So, what do? Well, about a year ago I was struggling with that and I figured, let's just give incentives for narrating attacks. So I sat down, I wrote up a paragraph on what I called dynamic fighting. Let me apologize in advance if this is an idea that exists elsewhere. I really haven't done any research on this topic. Regardless, dynamic fighting assigns each attack an associated saving throw, or dynamic fighting save, DFS. This equals 8 plus the stat modifier associated with the attack, plus your proficiency bonus if you have proficiency in the attack. As an example, the level 1 fighter attacks with a longsword, the DFS for the attack is 8 plus the strength modifier plus proficiency bonus. If the fighter has a plus 3 in strength, their save is 8 plus 3 plus 2, which equals 13. Now, the important bit. Once per turn when you hit with an attack, you can specify an intended effect that attack might logically have through a description to the DM. The DM makes a quick decision on exactly what that effect would be, usually a little extra damage, knocking them prone, shoving them back, etc., and what stat the enemy should use to save. Your enemy then rolls their saving throw against your DFS, and upon a failure, your intentions succeed. If the attack is a crit, the enemy auto-fails their save. That's it. I promise in play, this is exceptionally simple, so let me illustrate. In our example, the aforementioned fighter could hit with his longsword and say, I lunge forward with my longsword, cutting at my opponent's sword arm to disarm them. The DM decides both that this is reasonable and that the save is probably dexterity because the enemy is wielding a dexterity weapon, a rapier, and this is a question of contested weapon skills. The DM rolls a dex save against the fighter's DFS of 13 and fails, so the fighter slashes at his opponent, forcing his blade past the enemy's crossguard and cutting at his arm, sending the rapier scattering across the ground 10 feet away. He rolls his damage like normal, and combat continues. Now the enemy has to decide whether he draws his dagger and fights with a less than ideal weapon, or if he braves the opportunity attack to retrieve his rapier. Maybe he tries to disarm the fighter in return. You kind of see how this goes. I've played with this system for over a year now and have only found it to be additive. In practice, there's a sort of beauty to it because it accomplishes exactly what I needed, especially in my traditionally low-level games, without making combat any longer. So let me explain my reasoning. Dynamic fighting gives players an effectively infinite amount of choice in even their basic melee attacks and provides numerical benefits for the most fun part of combat, narration. Letting the enemies also utilize this system means the players are incentivized to narrate their attacks or else risk giving the enemies a natural upper hand in the form of extra damage or abilities. It also automatically increases tension by quickly changing the landscape of fights mid-combat. Rewards players for working together in a more nuanced and balanced way than a flanking bonus, which I don't use anymore, by the way. It doesn't add any extra time to fights because as one person is rolling damage, the other is making a save. Both parties are rolling at the same time, so it remains streamlined. And finally, it also makes unarmed fighting fun, which normally sucks in D&D because it's a set amount of damage. If this sounds like something you want to incorporate in your game, I absolutely encourage you to. It's worked great for me and has led to a bunch of super fun encounters, fantastic bar fights. If not, that's the beauty of D&D. It's kind of a mediocre jack of all trades system that you are free to modify in whichever way you like. Found this helpful? Cool. I'll make more of these if people are interested. In the meantime, we stream on Twitch on Saturday every other week, including this one, February 25th, starting at 5 p.m. Normally we start at 6, but this is a long one, so tune in for that if you have the urge. That's all for now. Cheers.